Is Pochettino fighting for his Chelsea career? Today, my friends, I'm here to discuss Pochettino's defiant press conference before the Newcastle game, as well as some interesting news surrounding our efforts to sign Diomande and discussions around a potential replacement in Michel of Girona. So my friends, hit that like button, share your thoughts and opinions, and don't forget to catch me later on for the match review after our game tonight against Newcastle. So I hope you guys enjoy, and without wasting no more time, so let's discuss the key talking points behind what went down during this Pochettino press conference. I'm going to go through the key talking points. Is Pochettino now looking to redirect pressure back on the board by fighting to save his Chelsea career? Well, here's what he had to say. He said that if players aren't happy with his coaching, they can talk directly to the owners. He mentioned the fact that currently the players are behind him, they believe in him, they support him. Pochettino reiterated his belief in the project he is building at this football club, and he mentioned that the fans aren't going to love another coach any more than myself. And he also expressed a hopefulness that maybe one day the Chelsea fans can support and get behind him. And for the last point, he mentioned the fact that comparisons with the Chelsea of old and right now, they're unfair and they just don't make contextual sense. So I'm going to go through giving my opinions based on what Pochettino is saying, and I'm going to start off by saying this. Listen, I have been critical of Pochettino. I'm not going to change my opinion on that, but I focus my critique on what I see on the pitch from a tactical sense, from a man management sense as well too. I'm not here to be throwing out personal digs. I feel like too often at times I see fans crossing that line time and time again. Things get personal, his appearance, his dress sense, XYZ. It don't make any sense to me. I'm only focusing on what this guy is doing on the field because that's what he can control, right? But I'm going to be fair behind my takes behind the press conference, and you know what? We have to admit that throughout the season, Pochettino has been very supportive of the players. He's constantly taking the fire for these guys in press conferences, taking pressure away from them. So I guess it's no surprise to me that if you're a young player in particular, where maybe you need a different type of man management, a different type of patience, you're going to resonate to your manager for backing you in times of difficulties, because they're going to feel that pressure themselves because they're playing for Chelsea Football Club, one of the most demanding clubs in Europe right now. So I can respect why the players are going to be behind him. And I also think the fact that Pochettino brought this up, I think he's redirecting this back to the owners, the sporting directors, saying, listen, you know, the players, they back me, they want me. So before you think about sacking me for the next new exciting manager, just remember the fact that you may demoralize the players because they may feel more acquainted and more accustomed to wanting to continue working under what we're trying to build right now. Like, they understand it's been injuries after injuries. They understand that things haven't worked in our favor whatsoever. But the fact that after all the hardship, that the manager can confidently come out and mention the fact that these players back me, these players support me. You're not going to say that if that isn't true, right? So I thought that was quite interesting in the press conference. Outside of that though, I know there was a bit of outcry on social media when Poch mentioned the fact that, you know, realistically, the fans aren't going to love another manager more. And I kind of agree with that, because let's keep things real. You're going to have more of an affinity towards managers that are winning. But you're going to, you know, your investment in watching us gets rewarded because we get 3 points, or we're winning this piece of silverware, or doing this or doing that. And realistically, I think Poch is saying that it's quite hard to really rebuild this project. Hence why he mentioned the fact that comparisons with Chelsea of old and right now, they're not fair. That old Chelsea team, it was an exciting squad full of top-class experienced players. Players close to approaching their peak years, and a few very exciting young players part of that squad too. Whereas us, on the other hand, right now, we are only full of young players that have only been here for like up to a year, under 18 months. So I fully accept that context being given by Pochettino. And it goes back to what he's saying. You know, I can get sacked, I can get moved on, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the guy who's set to replace me will come and do something better overnight, because what needs to happen at this football club, there needs to be more time and patience around that. That's what I'm thinking Pochettino is alluding to. I'm not saying that I fully necessarily agree. As I've said quite a few times, I feel like, you know, Pochettino must control his controllables. There has been times where game management decisions near the end of games, or maybe certain lineup choices, or the fact that he hasn't been that confident in really progressing a particular style of play. There's been a lot of tactical confusion throughout the season. I feel like this is what he hasn't necessarily helped what's happening for this season. But outside of that though, I also think that if most managers came and let's say they had to deal with conditions right now, they may also struggle a bit, because maybe I'm being a bit unfair, but maybe it is a bit hard to really work upon what your ideas are tactically when there's so many players getting injured left, right and centre. That's something I'm personally still thinking about, because I'm not gonna lie, my guys, like when I've got a platform, I try to keep things as fair as I can, because I just don't like some of the little like basic type of negative fan discourse that it's like the same stuff every year and it doesn't really go nowhere. So I try to give the benefit of the doubt, because come on, I got no qualifications, I'm not an expert myself, I'm not gonna gas myself up to that level. But at the same time, there's still things with Pochettino that isn't impressing me. And as I've said, if he was to somehow change things around, if we went on a mad winning streak until the end of the season, or if he won the FA Cup, I'm holding my hands up, I didn't see it coming, but who knows if that could still be a possibility. So basically, in that press conference, Pochettino, I think, is really fighting for his future, because he's going to know that the rumours coming around about us talking to other managers, like, that's not a false thing, right? And I guess this now segues in nicely now to the next big story that came out today. And let's talk the report that came out from AS in Spain. And they mentioned the fact that we have expressed interest in hiring Michel Sanchez from Girona. Now, Girona, one of the most informed teams in Europe right now, one of the most captivating teams, a signature style with their football, and they're currently second in La Liga. But if you guys have been following Girona, they've been on an upward trajectory now for the past few years. When Michel first came through in his first season there, he got them promoted to La Liga. I think in his first season in La Liga, he got them a 10th place finish, like a massive famous win against Real Madrid where Castellano scored like 4 goals against them. And that's now followed by now being second place in La Liga. And they're on course to get Champions League football, which could be absolutely incredible. I think Girona reflects a club that is united from the board level to the management level, because Michel can't do what he does without the backing of the sporting directors, so they have to have that same shared vision. Currently, Girona are hoping that Michel can sign a contract extension which would take his existing deal to 2026, but the caveat would be there would be an exit clause attached in this new contract. So at this moment, it has come out that he wants to remain at Girona for next season. Personally, I think that's the right thing to do. I mean, if you're about to secure Champions League football, at least leave them when you've peaked there, and don't leave before you've actually been able to manage in Europe with this team you've been with now for the past few years. But taking things back to the report, it mentions that we presented a very important offer to Michel, and we've said that we see him as the replacement for Mauricio Pochettino. We aren't necessarily satisfied with Pochettino's management for the season. And the report even mentions the fact that we have already, as in past tense, sent out reps to Spain to express our desire of hiring the manager by holding these personal talks. That's past tense. And now that it's come out that Michel wants to remain here for one more season, is that saying goodbye to us having the chance to hire him? Who knows? Things can happen in this game. Money talks. Who knows what could happen? Currently, it's not looking that likely. And I guess what makes things quite interesting too is that we can't forget that Girona are part of City Group. And within City Group, there's belief that Pep Guardiola won't be at Man City for his whole career. And if he does go, they're earmarking Michel to be that replacement and successor for Pep Guardiola. It makes sense, he's a manager within their network, their model. He understands how things work. It would be a very smart and astute move within Man City, and they've been one of the smartest clubs in terms of how to become a powerhouse in European football now for over 10 years. So where does this leave us? I think to end with things, I want to understand why Michel would be the guy that the club decided to try and persuade to hire. I think it's a very interesting story that this has finally come out, and it also reconfirms to me why Pochettino now is being a lot more outspoken in his press conferences. Now, I think Michel could make sense. I think it's cool to talk about this hypothetical because our board and owners, they're going to be thinking we've spent so much money on these players because I guess their vision was we want to play like a stylish possession type of football. We spent and invested a lot of money into more technically proficient players on the ball. And, you know, at times, you know, with Pochettino's reliance on this like maybe powerful type of football, can this squad necessarily play that football to the highest levels? Maybe not. But with Michel, I'm not going to go through lots of tactics. I might do that in a separate video. But, you know, the system he uses at Girona, I would call it actually like a 4-3-1-3. Why? Because the goalkeeper is part of the build-up phase. The goalkeeper actually makes part of that back four. And this is what I mean by the smart things he does. You know, another thing, overloads in central areas. He likes to have a lot of players like compact together with, you know, encouraging passing combinations, rhythm, understanding. And then he likes to create those fast breakaways for like that one winger that holds the width wide. And of course, a striker that can, you know, pin defenders and make those runs in behind. So, you know, if I was to give like a super lazy comparison, I'd say that Michel has bits of like De Zerbi's build-up. You know, he has bits of Pochettino's, you know, mid-block type of defensive setup. And he has bits of Spalletti's attack with Napoli from last season. I think that's the combinations I see when I've watched him play. And I guess you think to yourself, you know, if you've bought Lavia, Caicedo, Enzo, you want these guys having rhythm together. You know, we've got Mudryk, pacey wingers that aren't necessarily the focal point of our attacks. We have a super technically proficient defense that could easily play that type of football. So, you know, to end with things, all I'm going to say is it does seem like if we've already tried to make a move for this manager, is that alluding to the fact that maybe Pochettino's potential successor is going to focus more on like a more technical type of style? I think that'd be quite interesting. But to give you guys some other context too, listen, Girona have been incredible this season. I think it says great things about his management that he's kept that form up. But they're also susceptible to through balls and behind. They are susceptible to those counter-attacks as well too. And in a lot of games, they would have been punished for that if their form wasn't absolutely incredible as it is right now. So listen, it's a reminder that there is no perfect system in the game. You know, you accept what your risks and your rewards are going to be, and then you coach around that. So my friends, that is the second story out of the way. We now end things with a bit of transfer news. And let's discuss the reports coming out from Portugal by the Daily Record. And they state that we have still not given up on signing Ousmane Diomande for this summer. Now, as we know, we're looking to hire new centre-backs. Silva, Chalobah, they'll probably go. And I wouldn't be surprised if there was like another surprise player that was to leave maybe if the right offer came through. The Record report that we have finally now made initial contacts with the players' camp, and we've expressed that desire to sign him with a bid believed to be around 60 million euros. Now, for Sporting, ideally, they want that 60 million, but they want an additional 20 million in add-ons. And I think maybe that makes sense. We know that Diomande has like an 80 million release clause in his deal, but Portuguese clubs, as we know, have expressed this willingness to be able to, you know, work with structured deals as long as the money is good. And for us, we've shown that we'll pay whatever money we can if we can structure it in the best, most favourable terms for ourselves. So I think that's quite interesting that this news is coming out. And I guess maybe it makes sense because Diomande is probably one of the most like in demand, hottest prospect defenders in Europe right now, because you've got Liverpool, you've got Arsenal, you've got many big clubs across Europe hoping to try and sign him. And I guess with all this attention around the player, is that suggesting that we feel the pressure now to try and make a move for him right now to beat out the competition? Because that's the reason why we signed guys like Enzo in January instead of waiting until the summer. That's why we've done some of the business that we have done to beat out the competition. Time will tell. Let's see what happens. As we already know, many scouts from Chelsea have attended games at Sporting Lisbon this season. They've monitored guys like Victor Gyökeres. They've monitored Diomande. They've monitored Lisbon themselves. They've monitored Ruben Amorim. So we clearly like something that we see in Diomande. As we know, we have to sell before we can buy. Maatsen, Lukaku, and maybe Chalobah, Broja, that could be at least like nearly 100 million plus coming in terms of like pure profit, because there is a release clause inserted in Lukaku's deal, which means that if any club wants to hire him after the Roma season ends, they have to activate and pay the full amount of money. So, You know, we could have at least like 120 million of like pure accounting profit to play with. And when you mention the fact that, remember, it's a player cost that you're paying every year. So with our recent spending in the summer, I think that accounted to being around like 97 million for the year based on the player costs for all those transfers. So you can understand how this works and how we would definitely have money to play with. The risk is though is that every time we keep floundering every season, there's less and less players we can turn to within the club that we can sell for this pure accounting profit. Personally, if we're going to invest into the team next season, I don't see why we need to sign a centre-back. Listen, Diomande will probably be an excellent defender, but you can't have every player in the world. And I think you must prioritise important needs in your team first. When you've got Badia Shaw, Levi Cole, Disasi, which you invested in, you know, you've got Trevor Jalaba, plus you've got young defenders like your Gilchrist Humphreys, a 2-footed defender. There's not many of those guys who are equally good on either foot. It does feel like we have enough options already. And let's not even forget that Wesley Fofana is coming back, a guy that is one of the most expensive buys under this new regime. Is one of the top earning players at earning over 200k a week. This isn't a player that you just give up on overnight. He'll come back, you'll get a pre-season to get ready again for next season. And already it feels like we are absolutely stacked in defense. So for me, it feels like the ultimate case of diminishing returns when you've got like all these expensive big money centre-backs fighting out for 2-3 positions. You know, we need, maybe a striker could be more important, or like a superstar attacking player that can make sense of what we do in the final thirds and bring greater proficiency and quality in those areas. I think I'd rather see the money go there. I don't think we need another window where we're signing another 6-7 players. I think right now you have to give time to what we've already bought, let them acclimatise, let them grow, because otherwise you're going to kill the value for all of them. And you're going to ruin that because players cannot grow unless they have minutes to play with. So, I don't know. I think Diomande is a good guy, but I don't think he even has to leave Sporting Lisbon for another season, realistically. And then maybe you can assess what happens to the Disasi's, Fofanas and Co back in future seasons, but not right now, not for this summer. Maybe when Kendry Paez comes the following summer after this one, then you can think about what to do. But honestly, I think it's overkill, and I'm not really impressed by all these reports surrounding new centre-backs. I think it's silly. So my friends, that's the news today. There's some of my opinions. Make sure you guys share your opinions on the news that's broken. And on that note, I hope you guys enjoy. I'll see you guys later tonight for the game versus Newcastle. I'm Nini FC. This is Blue Lions TV. Catch you guys later.